Hi, everybody. It's Vivek Patel here from Meaningful Ideas and Gentle Parents Unite, and I'm with my new friend Aaron Johnson of Holistic Resistance and Grief to Action. And Aaron and I met recently because we're both teaching at the same event. I've been doing my workshop on dancing with your inner child, which I did the last part yesterday, and it was really beautiful. And Aaron, what are you sharing here?
Yeah, I'm teaching a combination of anti-racism work, but specifically dealing with heart-centered focus. And we were talking about trauma tracking, and in that we talked about the chronically undertouched. And so we started just kind of breaking down the desperate need to bring not only anti-racism thinking systems to be aware of how being chronically undertouched is a part of a key design in the oppressive system that we're in.
Yeah, the first time I heard you say chronically undertouched, it went in like a knife. It's such a powerful thing, and I love the acronym. People who follow me know I love acronyms, and I love the acronym CUT. It's so good. I really appreciate your use of words and the way you bring like such deep feeling to them. And in Aaron's sessions, which I attended both of them, you use like song with so much heart and so much power. It just brings the whole group together. I really love that. And in one of Aaron's sessions, he told a story about kids in school that just had me weeping and weeping. And so I really wanted to hear that story from you and to share it with my followers because it's just like, it exemplifies everything that I do. Would you like to share that story?
I would love to.
Yeah.
And I'll just start with a little bit of context that might help the story be present. And that is that what I realized is I grew up singing. And there are times in my childhood I thought it was just not that important. I enjoyed it, but it didn't feel like it was significant. And particularly we sang in our family, our tradition was to sing without instruments. Partly it was economic. We couldn't afford a lot of the instruments like keyboards and pianos. And part of it spiritual and religious. We come from a church that typically sings without instruments. But it was kind of a combination of both. And I never think about how a cappella music was so special. And it's not better than, but something about the human experience and vulnerability is there. And so I kind of grew up with just a lineage of singing.
Yeah.
I'm in the middle of 5 children. So I had this privilege of singing and jamming and beatboxing with all my siblings. So I grew up. 20 years into my life, I was almost 20 years into singing.
Right.
And so for me, I have a love for children. And I have been modeled by parents that love children. So this has just been a natural in my bones. And as a Black male, sometimes people get confused with how much I just enjoy kicking it with young children, like little can't hardly talk. Or it's like I'm in with children. And my mentorship is oftentimes they're 17, 16, but they're young folks need support, and I just love them. These are my children.
I learned so much about joy from my interactions with children.
Right. And so even holistic resistance, foundational in our philosophy, in our we don't have, mission statements in a core sense, but we said from the beginning that children are not just like they're welcome. There are teachers, right? There are teachers.
Yeah.
Like we have Earth is one of our teachers.
Yeah.
Children is one of our teachers, right? So this is not like, this is fundamental. Like when we bring clay balls in, and people say, "Oh, I can't get a babysitter. Can I bring my child?" Yes.
Yeah.
And if you have a babysitter, you still bring your child. You know what I mean? This is not. So and I know that can be intense a lot of times with some material we work on, but when the material makes sense and the parent feels good, we trust the parent to do that. But the point is that children are welcome, especially in our singing circles. And so when we're not doing singing circles or workshops, I had the privilege of going to my wife's special education teacher, and we found with folks with autism and different things that in neurodivergent, sometimes music is very helpful just to help us build contact. And we had one nonverbal student my wife had years ago, and she doesn't have a lot of interaction. She just kind of sits in her wheelchair, and she's kind of would glance at people. When I came in, and my wife introduced her, and I this is not the story I'm getting to. This is a pre-story, and my wife said, "Why don't you beatbox with her?" so the student's kind of sitting there. And I started doing and she kind of looks at me and starts moving her body a little bit. Starts going and we're interacting. It's the most interaction she had all day. My wife was like, "Wait a minute, this music thing and my students with special needs could totally be a thing." So that was we just got married. This is almost 10 years ago. So from then, that was her first teaching job at a college, and I came in every classroom she's ever taught. I come in and I do her classroom. But every other teachers hear about it and go, can you come to our classroom?
Right.
That's a great excuse. I'm like, you don't have much, and I'm in there, and I do a whole entire third grade class,
Totally.
as far as like all the third grades in that entire school. So this school had maybe 5 third grade classes per grade, and so I this is maybe 5 years into my wife's teaching, and I went into, so I would do all the grades. I would do 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th, and I went into, this is a new school. And it's the first time I did the entire 3rd grade, I'm basically doing the whole school in the classrooms.
I love it.
And so it's kind of a marathon. You go in 45 minutes, 45 minutes. And I go into the first 2nd grade class.
Yeah.
And
second grade.
Yeah, 2nd grade. And I went in there, and I always just check in. I'm like, y'all down to sing? And they just, I'm a singer. I always the same question. Who in here is a singer, right? I'm a singer. And I say, who in here is a beatboxer? They all raise their hand. I'm a beatboxer. And everyone kid's like, what's a beatboxer? And I go, you make beats with your mouth. I'm definitely a beatboxer. He's in. Doesn't know exactly what it is, but they're in.
They're in before they know what it is.
Exactly. This is the beauty of 2nd grade.
Yeah.
And so of course we sing, and we beatbox, and we sing. And I've been doing this for several years, but I remember this is when it started to dawn on me. This is where the story starts to kind of solidify itself. And I leave there like just energetically on, just the magic of young folks. And I leave that 2nd grade class, and I go into the 3rd grade class, and I go, who in here is, same question, who in here is a singer? And I could notice half the class would raise their hand. And the other class they'd already been taught they are not a singer.
Yeah.
And I know this is always my heart starts to track this. I'm trauma tracking, like, I just came out of the 2nd grade class. It's 1 year later. This is 1 year later.
1 year.
Right? Yeah. Half the class. Almost down, if we counted them out, almost half the class.
Yeah. And even the way you raised your hand was like a little slower.
Yeah, it's not as fast. They're not like, they're like this. It's literally slower, which is almost the kind of, they're about to not have any hands.
Yeah.
They're still trying though.
Yeah.
And I tell them, no, they're all singers. I don't know that this is not about being a good singer or a bad singer. This is about being human and having fun. And inevitably, we can get them all singing.
Yeah.
We get them going. 3rd grade is not the place where they start to really, they're like, oh, okay, I get it. Oh, I didn't know that was possible. They're in, right? And we're having a good time. We're beatboxing and we're singing. And they have options not to, but I would say 90% of the time, by the time we're done 45 minutes, everyone's making some kind of sound. I tell them, even like I said, adults, rub your hands together as participation. Little sounds are okay. A whisper's okay. Like, what? I can whisper? Yeah, you can whisper. And of course, they all singing. Yeah. But the point is, they have that option.
Letting them know it's all accessible.
It's all accessible. Yeah. It's nothing's better than that. We need your voice.
Yeah.
Right?
We need your voice.
Exactly. Yeah. And that's something I just track. So that was a teacher. So we sing.
Yeah.
And I walk out of the 3rd grade, and I go into the 5th grade or 4th grade class. And this is about the same. 5th and 4th are about the same.
Right.
And I walk into their class, and I go, who in here is the singer? And maybe we can get 4 or 5. But most likely one person's raising their hand going, I'm a singer. As long as you don't make me sing, I'm a singer.
As long as you don't make me sing.
Yeah. I'm a singer, right? And so it takes a bit longer, but we are able to start singing. We are able, but it's more tender. I could tell that they have been educated out of their singing, out of their fun, out of their freedom in that context. I can tell that embarrassment, self-image becomes more prioritized over trying to be free in that sense. So a lot of things that are there. And by the time I get to 6th grade, we're lucky to get one child to raise their hand and say, I'm a singer. Yeah. And usually that child has been in choir. They've been told they have a good voice.
Good voice, eh?
They've been taught this idea. Yeah. They've been told that.
Yeah.
Everyone else been told that you're not a singer.
Yeah.
So for me, that story doesn't sit simple for me, because when I sing with people in workshops and people come in and they say, I'm 30 years old, I'm 40 years old, I'm 50, and I haven't singing in 30 years. And I heard that you said that we want people that you've been heard around their voice to come, and as long as I'm here, I'm not even sure if I'm going to sing, I'm just going to come and think about it. I said, that's a blessing to come here and think about it.
Yeah.
And 9% of the time, people are like, I sang today for the first time in 20 years. Yeah. That's some of the best feedback. Not that the song circles sounded great.
Right.
Not that the harmonies were so tight.
Yeah.
It's that I haven't sang in 20 years. When I was in 3rd grade, someone told me. It's almost like that time. When I was like 7 years old, someone told me, you sound like this, you are this. And so I just stopped.
Yeah.
And I hear enough of these stories over the last 10 years of I'm doing this, that it is clear to me how important it is, not only for us to get access to our voices again, but to understand that this is a design that's educating us, hurting it, and traumatizing it out of our bodies.
Yeah.
And so I just feel like, for me, it's not just that they're not singing, it's an indicator of the system around it. It's something's up. If we look for canaries, look at indicators.
Yeah.
This is an indicator. Touch is an indicator. And if we can get ahead of it, as a parent, we can get ahead of it.
Totally.
This is something we can get ahead of.
Yeah.
So that's the piece that I shared in the workshop, because I was kind of introducing singing.
Yeah.
I want people to know that I'm very aware that someone may have told them something, and I'm here to let them know they have an option to rethink that.
Yeah, for
So
sure.
that's the story.
It's an amazing story. But as soon as you got to the 5th grade, I was like a mess of tears, you know. And it's because my whole life right now is dedicated to empowering children and empowering parents to empower their children. You know, that happened to me with dance. Like when I still remember that when I was like 10 or something, I had some friends over and we were dancing in the living room. And one of them said, "Oh, Vivek, you forgive the genderism in this because I don't believe in it, but this is what was said to me. Vivek, you dance like a girl." And growing up in patriarchy, that's an insult, right? Like now I'd be like, awesome, right? But for me, like I stopped dancing that instant. And I didn't dance again until I was 37, 35 or 37. And now I'm like, I mean, all I can do is dance, you know, and I dance every week, and I dance all over the world, and I teach dance, you know. But it took like 3 decades and some like mystical experiences for me to break out of that shell. And but it was in there all along. I still feel like weeping when I feel that like the dance is such a part of me, you know. And in your workshop with the singing, I could remember being afraid to sing. Like maybe it was like 4 years ago, I was at this dance event, and all the people that were staying at the event were staying at a hostel together. And I had this song in my head. I was trying to remember what the song was, and I said, "Oh, I can't remember this song. I'm trying to remember the name." And people said, "Sing it for me." And I was like, "No way! I'm a terrible singer." Exactly, you know. And they said, "Just sing, Vivek. It's just us." And I was like, "Okay." And I sang, and they were like, "It was beautiful. What are you talking about?" And I was like, "Really?" And in your workshop, I sang with no hesitation. You know, I was just like all in. First of all, you help with that. The way you bring it, the feeling that you have, the way you embrace everybody is just like you can feel the earth. Actually, pause for a sec because I want to get my clay ball.
Yes. Oh my goodness! Look at this.
Look at this, Aaron. Will you talk about this?
Yes,
please?
This is our teacher right here. This is some raw clay from the Mojave Desert. It was harvested from. We have a 4.5 acre property, which has our family church on it, which is now also Holistic Resistance headquarters. And we discovered there's a 1/4 acre of a natural clay harvest, and we noticed many years ago, but we started using it as far as our property building and teacher, maybe about 5-6 years ago. And what I did is this clay ball comes from a workshop that every workshop I'm able to, even though I drove here 3,000 miles to here, I took a bucket of clay with me. And people say, "Well, what handouts do you have for your workshop?" I'm like, "This is the handout. This is the only handout you're getting. No handouts paper-wise.
Right.
You can take notes, but this is the handout."
Yeah.
And I think I'll just say about this clay is that when we're talking about anti-racism work, we're talking about human work, we're talking about being connected. I feel that I went to several climate workshops because I do oftentimes work with folks doing climate justice, and we'll be in some hotel in Los Angeles, and they're like, "The earth is burning, and we gotta do this, and we gotta do that for the earth." And this is everything is magic. This is, these are TED Talk level thinking.
Right.
And I'm looking around going, these are amazing people, but where is the earth? We're in this posh hotel with the air conditioner going. We don't got a plant in this place. Where is the earth? We're talking about the earth, but we've cemented it under our feet.
Yeah.
We've protected ourselves from it. That there's no raw earth room. And I thought to myself, this feels like an American activity, where saying we want to do things, and I'm not saying that they weren't serious about their activity, but there's a missing point of like, let's bring the earth in the room. We're talking about it's right here. It's accessible with all the cement we have. We can go out and find the earth, and so. This has been something I've been really clear about, that even though I talk about anti-racism, I talk about all these oppressions, this connection piece in our hands is a part of us remembering that the comment I share and the story I share with my mentees, I just let them know that when we die, we turn to this. We don't turn to our cell phones. As much as we love our cell phones and they're powerful tools, that's not us. This is us. And so if we talk about touch plan, we talk about grounding. Almost every piece of work I do, I don't care if it's a chronic touch project, I don't care if it's anti-racism project, clay is the essential piece.
Yeah.
And that's what that clay ball is about.
Yeah, for sure. You know, when you said we don't turn into our cell phones, we turn into this when we leave. It really hit me, because one of the things that I talk about a lot is that in order to help kids learn values, parents often say they have to learn values and we have to enforce values. And I say that, like, our values come from a sense of our shared humanity. They come from a sense that we have something unique inside of us that we share. That it's the same spirit, it's the same consciousness, and it arises from the same earth, you know? And when we feel that in our bodies, when we feel that in our relationships, you said this in your own words yesterday, that we don't want to oppress each other. We can't oppress each other. You know, when I saw my kid, when she popped out, I was right there in her face. You know, and the first thing that I did was I shooed all the doctors away. And the first thing I did was I went right into her face, and her eyes were wide open, and we looked right into each other's souls. And I said, I love you, I love you, I love you, I love you. For like a full minute, I just did that. I wanted that. I wanted me being there, her first. And then immediately went to Mom. And she said to me back, Dad, if you treat me like most people treat their kids, I'm going to hate you when I'm a teenager. Because it's the disconnection, you know? We actually, in many ways, forgive me for saying something so harsh. I don't mean this judgmentally. But kind of. That a lot of parents treat their kids like cell phones and not like clay. And this, for me, is, you know, it's like what I teach isn't really how to get your kid into the car seat and how to make them do their homework. It's how to see your kids like clay and not a cell phone. And how to feel your own humanity when you were a kid and you were treated like a cell phone, or maybe there weren't cell phones in those days, but whatever that it was, you know, the disconnected from your depth. You lost touch with your own depth. And to rediscover your own depth through your relationship with your child, preserving their depth. Like preserving my kids' play, preserving their sense of magic, their sense of themselves and their deep spirit. That was like my number one priority. Before any practical concern. I used to say I'll ruin the whole party before I'll give an inch. Because practical things always want us to control, they want us to use coercion. This is why intersectionality is so important. When you talk about anti-racism, and then the work that I do with kids, it's like the same thing. Because it's the idea of, can we liberate ourselves from the systems that teach us not to be human, that teach us not to be natural, that teach us not to be together? And I don't want that. It seems like a terrible loss. You know, and then your kids grow up, and the parents and the adults in general seem like a different species. I remember feeling like the adults were a different species, and I had to protect myself against them. I had to find my way around them. And as soon as the adults couldn't control me anymore because I was big enough, I went wild. You know, I didn't have a sense of my shared humanity. So I had nothing to guide me. I ended up in a life of crime and violence for many years before I had what I call an epiphany of conscience in my 20s. And I was able to kind of find my way back to myself. Partially from the kid showing up. I turned all of my aggression against my aggression, so that I could parent her in a way with depth and real connection. And partially I found a spiritual teacher back in the early 90s that told me that I was love. And all I knew was that I was aggression and manipulation to get my needs met. And no one had ever told me, you are love. And I believed him, because he believed it so much. I had never had anyone say it to me. I mean, people have probably said things like that, but I never felt anyone believe it. And so this is the other thing, like when we say things to our kids that are positive, and we don't believe it about ourselves, it's hard for them to believe us. This is why the work that we do for ourselves is so important. You know, that's why my workshop here, Dancing with Your Inner Child, was about like releasing all that pain and finding that connection with ourselves.
I love that you're sharing that. We teach a workshop for parents around anti-racism and sex education, and I was just chatting, and I say, you know, parents shape the world, and they go, well, you know, we have governments and we have nuclear weapons. No, parents shape the entire world. And they go, no, I don't think so. You think about it. I mean, the amount of power each government has. Well, who runs the government? Well, you know, we get the presidents and stuff. Well, who parented the president? Oh, who parented? Anyone you mentioned had to be parented. And I always joke, because they was like, you know, if I went back in time, I would whatever person's causing havoc, I would kill them when they were a child. I was like, no, you have to kill them.
Right.
You just talk to their parents and give their parents some guidance, and you fix the entire thing. We think of like Arnold, going back in time and killing the soldier when they were young and vulnerable. It's like, no, you ain't got to kill them.
Right.
You just gotta talk to their parents and give them some of this imagining if we had that power. But I say it because we have that power today. Yeah. My ultimate story is that
every child we encounter.
Exactly, is that we don't know with children I love, is we don't know who we're talking to. Right? We can just assume we're talking to because every child shapes the world. So there's a way that even if we don't know if our child's going to run the government or our child's going to make the next science breakthrough, it doesn't matter. The idea is that I assume people know, because parents sometimes, we say march in the living room because people say, I can't march. I have to be here and take care of my child. I have to nurse. I'm like, you are marching in your living room. The parenting work you're doing, let us notice it. So I just want to name that, like, the work you're talking about is world-shaping work.
Yes,
it's not just like, this neighborhood's better or the crime is world-shaping work. And I just, when you kind of explain what you were doing, and even though I'm still getting exposed to the magnitude of your work, I got enough to know that your work is world-shaping work.
Thank you, Aaron.
So just want to honor that.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it. And when my kid was young, because I had less capacity in those days because I was still managing my own mental health and stuff, because I was 28 when she was born. And I didn't know anything. But I knew I didn't want to use authority, and I didn't want to have a hierarchical, oppressive system in my home. I didn't quite know how to manifest that. So it took some years for me to kind of put it all together. And now I teach what I figured out through trial and error. But in those days, every decision I made that went against the mainstream, a part of me knew that I was changing the world.
Yeah.
I was aware of it.
Yeah.
I wasn't just trying to be nice to my kid. It was more than that. I felt like I was pushing back against, like, 10,000-year-old hierarchical, oppressive power over systems. And to this day, fortunately, there's like a lot of parents who are doing the same thing, more than there was in the day I was bringing my kids up. And what you were saying about every kid could possibly be the president. When I used to drive my daughter to high school every day, there was this one kid who he had like this big long hair and his like shoulders always slumped, nose like this. And he had like baggy pants down his thing, and he looked like he would just fight everybody. And I used to call him Mr. Prime Minister. And my daughter thought I was like kind of teasing him at first. And she said, Dad, why do you always call him Mr. Prime Minister? I said, because the way we adults normally judge this kid is not how I'm seeing him. I'm seeing his infinite potential. I'm not judging him by his clothes. I'm not judging him by being a teen. I'm seeing who he could possibly be if he's given something that can really nourish him, that can really help him touch himself. And she was so happy when she heard that. She was like, yeah, and she started calling him Mr. Prime Minister too. And every day when I would drop her off, he was almost always there, and we both go, Mr. Prime Minister.
Oh, sweet.
Yeah. And when my daughter was going through school, from kindergarten all the way up to grade 8, I was volunteering all the time. I was in there 4 or 5 times a week. I taught classes. I taught math and science classes. I volunteered to coach all the sports teams. And one year in grade 8, they didn't have a music teacher, so I taught the entire music program.
Yes.
Volunteer.
Yes. And
because I can play most of the instruments badly, but I can play most of the instruments. And see, I said badly, right? Singing is the same thing. I still have that in my head. And but I can play most of the instruments, so I did it and put on a music night, everything. So I was with these kids for 9 years.
Oh, snap.
Some of them, like when we switched to middle school, some of them were new, but I was with a lot of these kids for 9 years, and some of them for like 6, 7, 8 as well. That grade had almost no bullying in it.
Wow.
The grade above and the grade below, normal.
Wow.
But the grade that I was in, almost no bullying in it.
Wow.
The kids who would normally pick on the kids who normally would get picked on, they all supported each other. They wanted to have a sense of belonging in the whole class. This is like 100 kids, right?
Yeah.
But because I was in there, and I totally take credit for this, because I was in there, every kid that came to me, I saw them as perfect. I saw them as infinite, and I would reflect that back to them. I remember I was teaching a advanced math and science class at one point, because in school, the way it is with all the kids lumped together, there's like a third of the class that doesn't get what's going on. There's a third of the class that is kind of with the curriculum, and a third of the class that's bored a lot of the time. So and once a week, I would take the kids that were not sure what was going on and the kids that were bored, and I would have an hour with them. So I would do like remedial math, and I would do advanced math and science. But for me, it was never about the math and science. It was always about touching their hearts and creating a deep relationship. So I was teaching the advanced math and science class, and this one girl peeked her head in, who was not in that class. And she said, "Oh, this is the advanced class. Oh, I'm too stupid for that." And she left the class. So I said, "Okay, y'all talk amongst yourselves. I have to go talk to this kid." And I said, "Hey, come back here." And I acted like she was in trouble, right? Because adults act like they're in trouble. I have never gotten a kid in trouble. My daughter doesn't even know what it feels like to be in trouble. Like, she doesn't know it in her nervous system. Me, I'm always looking over my shoulder, when am I going to get in trouble? Anyway, so this kid came over, and she's like, "What?" I said, "We have a very strict anti-bullying policy in this school. There's no bullying." She goes, "I wasn't bullying anybody." I said, "Yes, you were just bullying yourself." And she said, "Oh, really?" I said, "Yeah, you called yourself stupid." She goes, "Well, I don't know anything about that class." I said, "Math is nothing. Why do you care about math? Math is stupid." When are you going to use math in your life? Nobody uses it. Maybe to calculate your groceries. That's it. So it's not the most important thing unless you're going to be like going to science. I said, "But I bet there's something you can do that nobody else can do." And she got this little smile on her face. I'm so glad that I picked those words. She got this little smile on her face. I said, "I don't know what that is, but I saw that smile. And I know you know there's magic there." And she said, "Yeah, there is something." I said, "That's your magic. That's your power. And I believe in that in you." And she like skipped off down the hallway after that. You know? And I was doing that for 9 years with these kids, that when my daughter finds she's 25 now.
Oh, wow.
When she passes one of them in the mall, the first thing they say is, "How's your dad?"
Wow.
Yeah. And so I know that bullying is something that this is one adult, not even the whole. I mean, all the other teachers. Honestly, the other teachers in the school, they also started to change because they couldn't help it.
Can't help it.
You know, but one adult can. I want to say one person, really. I don't want to separate myself as an adult, but we are talking about kids. So one adult going in with this attitude and consistent can change the entire culture.
So true.
I really believe
so true. And I love the examples, and I love that you're in school. I know you're in Canada, right? So school's probably a little different than ones in the United States and the Western, but they're very similar actually, as far as like you guys are outperforming us as far as those stats. But what I think is like trauma-wise of how when my wife is a teacher, my brother's a teacher, my older sister's been a teacher. Like we've been engaged with the public school system in the United States for many, many years. And of course, I went to school myself.
Yeah.
But one thing I will think about is I love how you're there interrupting that dynamic, because I feel like so much is laid into the hearts and minds of children in the hierarchy of like, this is an honors class, this is a special education class. Because I was in special ed almost my entire 12 years, right? And people think, oh, young black man, special education, he's not going to make it past junior college. He's never going to. I remember going to his rehabilitation office to take me in to kind of get me a job after high school to help me kind of, because I'm special education. I'm a person of a global majority, but they would call me a minority in the statistic here. And it got me, and she had this list of jobs for me. And she goes, she said like a janitor, basically, and a janitor, basically. First of all, I've done janitor work. It's fantastic work. But she couldn't see anything beyond. She said, and she gave me this list of jobs. They're all very much entry point and or jobs that have struggled with academia. And she said, "What do you want to be?" And I said, "Well, I would love to be a college professor." She says, "Oh, no.
Really,
no,
eh?
You can't.
Yeah.
I mean, you have dyslexia. You're coming out of school out of special education. You'd be lucky to get this job here as a janitor. And you should do that." And I thought that I actually was a janitor at that point later on in my life, but it wasn't that she offered the janitorial job. It's a good job. But it's her expectations of my entire existence based upon what the school told her who I was.
Yeah.
And I appreciate my mother, right? This is important. And my father, because they never said, "Aaron, take this." But they said, "Aaron, what do you want to do?" And I said, "I want to be an artist. I think I want to be a photographer. If I can do photography, it doesn't require me to like take tests. I love visual. I love people." I didn't realize that was the actual motivation. But a photographer, so I went to junior college and was majored as a photographer. But what's important, I think, about that is that now that I teach and I speak, people look at me and go, "How in the world would anyone ever tell you that you couldn't teach? You're a natural teacher and you're a natural, sharer, facilitator. How dare you?" They tell you that. But there's a way. It's not about just who I am or where I'm at. I had a powerful parent structure to kind of give me these tools. But there's a school system that says, we did the numbers. We didn't check your heart. We didn't check your parenting structure. We didn't check how much love you have. We just looked at the numbers, said this, "Oh, you struggle with reading."
Yeah.
And we looked at the world and thought, you don't have a chance as a young black man.
Yeah.
As opposed to, even though Aaron loves people so much, Aaron has had never ever called to dean for any fights his entire, even people came at him, "Aaron, you see how powerful Aaron loves people, how he's always taking in young children, young folks that are kicked out of the team."
Can you imagine?
That is important. No,
Yeah.
it's like, well, he can't hardly read, so and his spelling is atrocious. He's going to prison. And so for me, I just appreciate those moments where institutions and individuals will say, this is who you are.
Yeah.
And this is how the system says you're going to be.
Yeah.
And parents and a handful of teachers that stand up and say, no, this is not actually the full story. And I think there's something about what you're sharing about saying, no, bullying is not just a product that has to be here. You model something different.
Yeah.
That's profound.
Yeah, for sure. It reminds me of this time when I was driving home, and I saw these 3 teenagers, early-ish teenagers, hovering around a gas station. And I knew immediately they were going to steal something because I know the vibe because I lived it, right? And so I kind of pulled my car over to watch the action. They were on bikes, and they ran into the store. They each grabbed a case of pop and they took off on their bikes. And one kid took this, and then they split up, right? And this one kid took this one path, and I know where the path leads, so I quickly zipped around in my car and I chased him down. And when he saw me chasing him, he knew I saw him, and he panicked a little bit, and he dropped the case, and he kind of fell off his bike, which was perfect. So I pulled up in front of him, and I jumped out of my car. And I said to him, I saw you steal that pop. And he goes, oh, I didn't know. I said, listen, next time you steal something, don't run away so fast, because everybody's going to know you stole something. You got to be cool when you leave. And he stood there in shock, right? I didn't know. I said, yeah, listen, man, you're going to get caught so easily if you panic like that. You need to chill. You need to just kind of walk away like you own the world, and then no one's going to really even think that you stole it. And he's like, he couldn't say anything at that moment. He was just staring at me. And I went and I got and the pop kind of spilled everywhere. So I went and I got a bag. I said, listen, it'll be easier if you carry it in a bag. So I got a bag and I helped him pick up the pop. And I said, if you put it on your bike handle, it'll be easier. And he was like, all of a sudden, he just became so soft in that moment, you know? And I looked at him in the eyes and I said, listen, one thing I want to tell you. I said, we don't know each other, but a lot of people are going to tell you you're a bad person, especially when you do things like that. And I want you to know you're not a bad person. You have depth in you, you have wisdom in you, and you have love in you. And just because you steal something doesn't take that away. And I want you to remember that. He said, I will. And then we just split.
Wow.
Yeah. And I hope that kid remembers me now.
Yeah.
You know, it was a decade ago or something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, you can't help but remember that.
Yeah.
That's a life-shaping moment.
Yeah.
We talk about life-shaping moments. It's a life-shaping moment. I know one when I see one.
Yeah.
That's a life-shaping moment. And I think, to me, that's one of the beauties of parenting is we get life-shaping moments daily, hourly.
Yeah.
And I think sometimes we forget how much patience, love, honesty, transparency around what's happening inside of ourselves, humbling ourselves is a life-shaping moment. It's remodeling what they're going to meet in the world. I think for me, not that we discuss this right now, but I'm really curious because I work with the chronically untouched young men. And when they start to learn how to touch each other, I have to tell them, when you go back to your environment, you can't just reach out and touch another black man because he's going to get confused because he doesn't have a workshop, he doesn't not work on his trauma story, he might hit you, he might be violent, he might even kill you if you reach out and be tender with him because of how much interrupts where he's been conditioned.
Totally.
And so it's this pain of bringing a young African heritage person, anywhere from 15 to 21, and older and younger, but that's kind of the primary group I work with. And when they come into my space, they would never imagine reaching out and holding my hand for more than 10 seconds. It would just be terrifying or just uncomfortable or what are you trying to do? Is something sexual happening here? And 6 months later, a year later now, they're hugging and they're cuddling and they're holding hands and all the spectrum. Some people are still just holding hands and not cuddling, but it's the spectrum.
Yeah.
And all spectrums are welcome. Any kind of touch is useful, depending on the trauma story. Most people that we're talking about here are not like neurodivergent in a way that's traumatized. The people that need it, and even people that are even a little bit of touch, whatever feels good, we adjust. My point ultimately is that they've done a tremendous amount of work, equivalent to maybe a PhD as far as the emotional labor and time and thinking.
Yeah.
And they can't go back into the world easily. I have to almost give them another class of like how to take their new unlearn all that trauma and say, in these spaces it's safe. Because they are so excited. They're like, oh my God, I want to just like tell everybody, like, yeah, and everyone's going to be as excited as you are because they're going to be confused because you're a young black man and you're supposed to have a weapon, you're supposed to be violent, you're supposed to be hypersexualized, you're not supposed to be tender, you're not supposed to be heart open, you're not. That's confusing to almost every system, from school to your playground to the sport teams you're on to all the things that you naturally participate in. okay, football, to go and be tender with someone that hurts themselves. They put your arm. That's violent.
Yeah.
They'll hit you. And so there's a way that I'm curious, as you are teaching a way of being with these children, that is the completely polar opposite in most civilized societies.
Yeah.
And so people of low majority, and I know you work with all the above, are going to go into the world that says you're not a free white. You should know what it feels like to be in fear.
Right.
You should know your place of being in hierarchies.
Yeah.
You should know that you can't be president, or you can't be governor, you can't be a professor, you can't be whatever, because your light doesn't matter, your message matter. And I know that parents, like my mom was an example of that, can interrupt that. But I'm just curious of like how you might support parents to have done this magical work, have created this beautiful separate culture, right? Not separate from humanity, but separate from our civilized culture, and then merge them into the world to go get to college, or to go and get a job, or to go and engage where folks are like confused by them having access to their whole mind. I'm just curious like that. And I know that's a big question, but maybe in 4 or 5 minutes or 2 minutes, you can kind of give me a sense of how you help that transition.
Yeah, for sure. One of my sayings is, we can teach kids about oppressive systems without replicating them in our homes. And so I never wanted my kid to be naive about how the world works. And these other kids too. I didn't want them to be naive about how the world worked, about what oppression was, about the obstacles they would face. I just didn't want to be another one of those obstacles. That's the key. And actually I can teach them more about how the obstacles work, what the systems are, and how to navigate the systems if I'm the trusted guide. If I replicate those systems, I'm no longer the trusted guide, right? And so, first of all, it's important for me to understand how those systems work to the best of my ability. And then, like when my kid was going into kindergarten, I told her, listen, most adults will treat you like a kid. They think that you're less than. They think that they have power over you. And they have these things called consequences that they can give you. And there's this thing called punishment that they do. And it was a heartbreaking conversation. And then I would talk to her about different races and different genders and how they're treated differently in different situations. And I talked to her about the police and the justice system when she started to go out into the world. And I would talk to her about those things so that she would really understand the systems that she was going into and what the results of her choices could be. I didn't say you have to make this choice, but I did say this is the result of what that choice could be. And you have to decide, does it make sense to engage in that decision, knowing that this could be the result. It could be this or it could be this, right? But in either case, you got to know what you're up against. So I really believe in really informing kids about the world, how other people think and why, what the power structures are and why, what the consequences are and why, both the on-the-books consequences and the real-world consequences, because, teachers, first of all, I love and respect and admire teachers because they're doing incredible work. And I've met some teachers in my life that changed my life, and teachers that really empowered my kid. And there are a lot of people teaching that ought not to be teaching. And I wanted her to know that those teachers will try and take you down. That separate from the schooling system, working out their own inner child stuff, their own trauma, they're going to be dumping it on the kids. And I was never shy about talking about that stuff. I didn't. There's this concept of, you have to protect your kid's innocence. But for a lot of young people, there's no option for that, especially people with marginalized identities, right? With oppressed identities that are historically oppressed and targeted. And so it's often a privilege to say, I can protect my kid and keep them innocent. And so I'd rather just be upfront about it. But in their actual experience with me, they don't experience that oppression. So that in their nervous system, they know what oppression feels like because they know what being treated with their deep humanity feels like. And so it actually gives them more awareness of when they're being treated with oppression. But having the awareness of how the systems work, and because they trust me, that when they're in a situation that they have to play the game, that instead of resist, because if I have another obstacle, they're going to resist me as well. But my daughter often says that my voice, and my wife's too, our voices come into her head, and she lets it in because she trusts it. There's no block to the channel. This is the problem with punishment. With punishment, every kind of punishment, any wisdom that you give gets blocked. But I want an open channel to the kids. I want them to, if I say an example is, if the police pull you over, how to engage with that, because that's one of the examples I hear a lot, especially from the Black families that I work with. in that moment, I don't want the kid to be resisting my guidance. I want them to think, okay, this is what my parent told me. I'm going to believe it with all my heart. And then the kid will not have that resistance. They have rebellion maybe everywhere else, but for what I share with them, it's going to be in their nervous system, and they're going to trust it. I always say I want it to be a partner in my kids' rebellion, not the thing they have to rebel against. You know, and I feel like that's the greatest safety we can give to our kids is self-knowledge, self-awareness, self-love, and the relationship with us. You know, and then you add discernment on top of that, and knowledge on top of that, like real world knowledge. It's a powerful combination. I can't think of something more powerful than that. You know, so that's how I approach it. Yeah.
Thank you. This has been such a great introduction to your mind, but also your physical energy. And I know this is a push here to have this in the morning, but this is the best way to start the day. That's my name. I just appreciate it.
For sure. I would do this every day with you.
Oh my goodness. Oh my God. I would keep saying this.
Yeah. Would you like to share with people where they can find your work?
Yeah. You can go to grief2action.com, and you can go to holisticresistance.com, and all of our content is there. You can sign up for our newsletter. And I look forward to seeing y'all's hearts. And we have an Instagram, Holistic Resistance, on Instagram as well as a handle you can find us at. And most importantly, you know, I just want to say in searching for us that we are ever evolving and ever shifting in a sense of like, we have the Chronic and Touch project happening right now. And I feel like that project will be launching in a major way. So Chronic and Touch, or the Cut Project.com will be coming up live here. Nice. And I'm really excited because young folks are going to be one of the biggest centers of that whole project. And so I think it's a perfect timing for us to drop in. So that'll be another place in about 4 months to get access to our touch stuff specifically, because it's such a big content. The website has some, but it's going to have its own container here pretty soon. Fantastic. So just holding that up as a parent's. I feel like touch music being is the Harvard education that most people are trying to get there. This is the United States. I know Canada has their own probably education that's the highlight, but parents are always like, if I could get my kid to go to a good college, I'm like, you are the good college. Like you are the place that the knowledge is being shaped. And that's when I always bring the resources back to you are it. So that's a name that we hope that we encourage parents to do their good work and support them as they do the impossible. As isolation parenting is normalized in the United States, and I hope that we have more collective. So the fact you are a community is just tremendous.
Yeah, thank you so much.
What a resource.
Yeah, it's been fantastic. And please follow me on Meaningful Ideas if you aren't already. Meaningful Ideas everywhere, and if you want to work with me more personally and do this really deep work, you can come to gentleparentsunite.com. And remember that you are this and not a cell phone. Yeah.
Peace.
Thank you, Aaron.
Thank you.
Can we hug?
Oh, you kidding me?
Yeah.
Oh.
Thank you, my friend.
Oh, thank you. Such an honor. Let's keep reaching for each other.